You're listening to the Listen Up Show Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, show 036. Today we're talking with Robinhood Ventures Executive Director Ellen Weber. She is also Executive Director at Temple University's Fox School of Business Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Now let's get started. Hey everybody, Mitchell Chadro here. Welcome to the Listen Up Show podcast. If this is your first time listening, thanks for stopping by for the Listen Up Show podcast, which is produced several times per week for your entertainment, and show notes are found at mitchellchadro.com/show036. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. Please sign up to my email list for the latest special offers exclusively for our Listen Up Show Startup Entrepreneur Podcast audience at mitchellchadro.com/signup. Again, that's mitchellchadro.com/signup. Your welcome email will provide all the resources from the Startup Checklist, ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, courses, and many education and training materials to help you get started. Our three sponsors today: HostGator sponsors our Startup Round. Audible, an Amazon company, sponsors our Fast Pitch, and Snappa sponsors our Wrap-Up. You can also follow me on Twitter at Mitchell Chadro and Facebook.com/ListenUpShow. All the links are in the show notes. Now, let's get into the show. What are we going to actually talk about today? Well, we're going to talk to our guest, Ellen Weber, about how she helped start up and the resources her organization provides, steps she has had to take to build great companies, and what drives her passion to innovate, and what are we going to see coming out of this tri-state Philadelphia area over the next several years. Ellen, how are you this evening?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I got to tell you, it's great to have you on the show. You know, we have a ton of information to get through that I need to unpack. So I want to cover it all. So let's just jump right in. How's that sound?
Okay.
All right, great. What's the one thing that contributes most to your success?
Are you referring to Robinhood success? I think it's the depth and breadth of people in our group. We have 50 people, mostly serial entrepreneurs who have, really seen a lot of different types of companies and can provide a lot of help and support to the companies that we invest in.
You know, you're involved in a lot of different organizations here in the tri-state area. So that's certainly what contributes most, I guess, to Robinhood Ventures' success. But how about Ellen Weber? What contributes most to your success?
To my success, I think it's passion for growing companies and growing the economy of the region is probably what drives me more than anything.
Well, you know, I've already stated it, and you just did. Obviously, you're very active in the Philadelphia startup community, and you're also, of course, involved in many organizations, as we've just stated. So what are some of the recurring themes that you're experiencing as an entrepreneur that you can summarize for the benefit of the aspiring entrepreneurs out there, the current startups who are obviously looking for help, and those who are looking for those resources to help them not only start up, but grow and possibly even take their business to the next level? Or, you know what, it could even just be someone who wants to get the experience as an intern or find that first job in this particular space.
Wow, so that's a big question. Let me try and unpack that. So you're
going to unpack my question now, which is great. Okay.
So let's start with the college student who's trying to figure out how to get involved in the entrepreneurial community. There are a number of ways of doing that, and actually this is true for anyone who wants to put a toe in the water getting to know the entrepreneurial community. First of all, there's an organization called Philly Startup Leaders, and they run events for people who want to lead technology companies, and they run some excellent programs. You can read Technically Philly, and that tells you what's going on in the tech and entrepreneurial community. And you can also go to tech meetups in your field of interest. So I tell people to start by doing those things and finding out what is of interest to them, and they start meeting people that are really interesting.
And we're going to have all those show notes back at mitchellchadro.com/show036, because obviously the audience is really interested in all these resources. And so continue. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Sure. And then, so I can speak about Temple University in particular. We really have a robust program that helps students who think they want to become entrepreneurs, again, put a toe in the water. So we have actually a course that all entrepreneur majors and any other students across the university can take, where they are matched up with a startup or an accelerator. They do a 100-hour project that is supervised by, they take a course, it's supervised by a very experienced professor who's used to working with startups, and the startup company has to create a project for that person. So the student is getting a meaningful project, but the company is getting a student who can really hit the ground running. In addition to having a project charter that's laid out, the students get advice on best practices for working in startups from the professor and from other interns who have been through the program. So we're really helping our students put their best foot forward, but also helping the companies get a great experience from them, but also helping make sure that there's a good match and everyone's having a good experience. For everybody else, as I mentioned, there's all these other organizations that you can participate in to get a good feel for what's for how do I get involved with the startup community. That's probably one of the most common questions I get. And once you go to even one event, a whole world opens up in front of people. The different accelerators also run programs. just had a phenomenal program last week on the future of tech in Philly, startup grind through Benjamin's desk. There's a lot of ways of getting involved.
How did you wind up getting involved?
Well, I was working for, so my background is I worked for Anderson Consulting when I graduated. I then went to work for Shared Medical Systems, which was not a startup by any means, but a very entrepreneurial company with a fantastic innovation-driven culture. I left in 1999 to do some consulting, and the idea was to bring the practices of large companies to startups and vice versa. So I started working with a number of companies, particularly companies that were in Internet Capital Group and Edison Partners portfolios. And
I know those. I know both those names. Obviously, being here in the tri-state area, and we're actually going to get into a lot of detail in terms of all the companies that you've been involved with, because you're also a founder of a number of companies as well. But before we do that, HostGator sponsors this startup round. I use HostGator to host all of my websites. So check out the special offer of 25% off exclusive to my listeners of the Listen Up Show podcast audience at mitchellchadro.com/HostGator. Ellen, can you tell us what is the one best piece of business advice that you personally have ever received?
Wow. Probably listen to understand as opposed to listen to talk. So really try and probe on the person that you're speaking to understand what it is that they really are trying to tell you and what their needs and concerns are.
Well, with that response in mind, so that people can actually get to know you better, and that's why I actually call this podcast the Listen Up Podcast, because I love to talk, but you really don't start to have a dialogue with somebody until you really stop to listen to what they actually have to say. So can you fill in some of the gaps and tell us a little bit more about your own personal story? You began to tell us that, but maybe go into a little bit more in depth.
Okay, so as I mentioned, so I was working at Shared Medical Systems and wonderful experience, but I wanted to start working with startups, and so with others, we created a consulting firm called Antiphony, and we started taking on both small companies and large companies, taking the best practices of enterprise companies and bringing it to early stage companies, but also bringing the innovation and drive of early stage companies to larger companies. Our projects consisted of everything from strategic planning sessions to helping companies figure out what their next product would be, to ideation sessions. We had a wide variety of projects that we did, and then we grew from there. The next thing I did was help I helped support George Marks and Rob Weber way back in 1999 when they wanted to form a better way of investing in early stage companies. They created Robin Hood Ventures. I started to help them. And
how did you actually meet them? Because since 1999, Robin Hood Ventures has become very successful in their own right. And so how did you formulate those personal relationships that we talk to business people about that's so critical in building successful teams and companies?
I was married to Rob Weber at the time, and George Marks was both a very good friend and a business colleague, and he's so anyways, we started Robin Hood back in 1999. Those two were the drivers at the time. I was supporting it, and then over time I took on a larger and larger role and really became very passionate about helping to grow entrepreneurial companies. The group has continued to grow. We had 9 members when we started in 99. We have 52 members as of today. We've invested in 62 companies in the region. Have a very active portfolio. We've had some tremendous successes in those companies. Along the way, I co-founded a company called Vision Mind with Coley Brown, and there we were working with large companies who wanted to become more entrepreneurial, who wanted to be able to find the interesting technologies in the startup community, but also become more entrepreneurial and help bring out the entrepreneurial spirit in their best employees. And so we started to work with ING. They were our first customer worldwide, and then we grew our client list from there.
So what did you do? What did you actually do for ING, and how did you sort of build that relationship to sort of get in? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there right now who are obviously trying to build up their client base. And that would be very interesting to sort of explore with you.
Well, so ING in the U.S. had a history of being very good about looking and learning from early stage companies. The chief innovation officer in Amsterdam was interested in learning from the U.S. organization, how they did that. So they brought us together, and Coley and I were included because they thought that some form of creating some form of not angel investing, but some way of looking at early stage companies as deal flow and doing due diligence and all the things that an angel group would apply to ING's what ING was trying to accomplish. And in fact, it did. And we helped ING discover many new interesting technologies. We helped them build a platform that they used, and helped make. We thought about it as matching. We made a lot of interesting matches, and it was really interesting work.
You know, you mentioned a lot of companies that you have helped co-found. Obviously, we've briefly discussed Robinhood. That's obviously invested in over 60 early stage and high growth startups. So in looking at all of your experience over all these years and dealing with all of these different businesses, what would you think are some of the more common mistakes that you're seeing the startups or the entrepreneurs or the students who are actually interested in business make, or what actually delays them to sort of go forward, or it actually prevents their success?
Mm-hmm. So I see a wide variety of things. One thing I see is companies trying to raise money before they are ready to do so. So they should really be spending their time building a minimal viable product, is what we call it, enough to be able to test it in the market. If you test it in the market and you have what we call proof of concept, then when you come to investors for money, they're in a much better position, both from a financial perspective and just from the negotiation dynamic perspective. So I do see companies going out for funding a little bit too early. On the other hand, I see companies that are minimizing the amount of funding that they need, and so they find themselves in an endless cycle of fundraising. So that's another issue that that we see. We see some companies that spend without a clear plan, but the companies that are really successful, we see have a strong team, an understanding of their market and their customers' needs, and an ability to change the direction of the product based on what they're learning. They have enough understanding of their customer and the market to do that, so they don't get stuck in this is the product and this is what we're delivering, but they're also not pivoting every 10 seconds based on the last conversation. So you have to have both a deep understanding of your market, but you also have to, be able to understand what the customer is telling you.
Going into business is not for the faint at heart, and a lot of our successful entrepreneurs that we interview here, there are recurring themes that we hear over and over and over again, and that is that, you really have to be in it for the long haul, and, you have to be able to withstand the ups and the downs, and you basically have to have the right mindset. I can even tell you that some of our younger entrepreneurs, even a few that have actually been on the show, have decided to sort of, go the career path. So, again, it's not for the faint at heart. So with that, can you tell us some of the essential understandings that entrepreneurs or students should have in order to sort of have that proper mindset to kind of deal with those daily challenges that they're obviously going to face?
Right. So, one of the things we really focus on here at Temple is creating what we call an entrepreneurial mindset. And
okay.
That mindset plays whether you are working in a large corporation, in a government, organization, whether you're in a startup. And that is the idea that you are always thinking, looking at the business model, understanding what the customer wants, thinking innovatively, trying to uncover the untapped needs. And we have a number of courses that are focused on ideation, design thinking, and really understanding the customer, the business model, etc. Most companies focus their time and energy on creating new product, when the reality is that the bulk research shows that the bulk of profit over time comes from new business models. So you could have, for example, you could have instead of having cabs that are yellow, you could have cabs that are green or blue, but it's changing the underlying business model where the money gets made. And so we try and so that's one of the things we try and instill in our students, is to think entrepreneurially regardless of what type of environment that they're in.
We talk about teams and teamwork and building that team. Obviously, everybody, can't have everybody can't do everything, and so what are some of the things that you find yourself delegating that you might not be as good at, but because you have a team that's backing you, you're able to sort of work with them in that regard?
Right. So that has been tremendously helpful, having, a great team of people. And it's actually different teams. So there's a team that supports Robinhood. There's a team that supports, and there's a team that, that supports the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. And so, generally as a team we'll come to, and I have partners as well in both organizations. So, as a team, we'll come up with what are the big initiatives that we want to do this year. And then, we have just, a wonderful team of people that can then figure out, okay, if we say that we really want to, for example, at Temple, if we really want to focus on engagement this year, what are the things that we need to do that will really drive engagement in the university? Or if we really want to work with engineering and the medical school, what's involved in doing that, and what are the next steps? So that's been really wonderful.
Sure. Resources are really big for our young entrepreneurs and really those who are trying to take things to the next level. What would you say some of the resources are that you can recommend to the audience? Obviously, that's a really big help to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, first and foremost, interns. If you can carve out a project, I think interns can really be a great solution for an early stage company that does not have a lot of money. They'll think creatively, they'll work hard, they want to learn. So interns. But we use, there's a lot of tools we use here. I'm constantly looking at, is there something that I'm doing repetitively, and if so, is there a way that, can I find an app or something that will help me do it? So, for example, I was spending a crazy amount of time with people trying to schedule meetings back and forth. And so, I use something called Schedule Me, which lets me just include a little text in an email, and it lets people look at my schedule and look at their schedule and sign up for a time period. I estimate that probably saves me 5 hours of work a week.
Wow.
And there's lots of different applications like that. We automated our business plan here at Temple using WiseHive, which was really tremendous. Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures and Robinhood depend on an application called Gust, which helps us manage our deal flow. So having the right tools in place can really make a difference, and they don't have to cost a lot of money. But they do take some time to think about, how you're going to use them. But they've made such a difference, especially with on the Robinhood side, we're very virtual. And so we need a lot of tools that help us, because you can't just walk down the hall and ask someone a question. So we need lots of ways to share information. Dropbox, Box at Temple. Those tools really make a huge difference.
That's terrific. You mentioned Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures, and I know that the organization assists early-stage technology and innovation-based companies. But can you just talk to us a little bit more about, your involvement with Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures and,
Sure.
and how you get involved?
Yes. So Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures is actually run by Temple University, although it's for everybody. It just happens to run through Temple. Okay. And we've got and what happens is we do 4 forums a year where 8 to 10 companies get introduced to early-stage investors, and also large companies, the innovation officers, people who can assist those companies in other ways by being the first customer. As part of the quarterly process, companies apply to present. We probably get anywhere from 100 to 200 companies. Of those, maybe 70 meet our criteria. We have to winnow it down to about 12 to 14 companies that actually come in and present to our board. The board then gives them a lot of advice and guidance in terms of feedback, and then we select 8 to 10 companies that will actually present at the forum. And there's about a month period of time where the board is also providing guidance and assistance. We have people who are great at pitch coaching, people who really understand business models, people who really understand financials, and so we are tag teaming with the companies to make sure they've really got everything together before they come up in front of investors. For a lot of people, it's their first investor presentation, so we try and make them as effective as possible. And then the hope is that investors will find a company they find interesting and invite them to come back to their group to present and go through a due diligence process.
I hope everybody's listening up, because one of the main reasons I wanted to have you on is that you're literally involved with so many different things. It's so fascinating and so interesting, and I know that someone out there is going to get something. There's going to be so many different takeaways. I mean, we've talked about your involvement with the Philly Startup Leaders, with the Philly Tech Meetup. We talked about how you were managing director of Antiphony Partners. One of the groups that you haven't actually mentioned as of yet, which I was most fascinated to find out about, especially given the fact that I have 2 girls that are 16 and 14 and they're young entrepreneur startups in their own right, is your involvement with the Alliance of Women Entrepreneurs. And if you can talk to us about that and actually how that can actually impact and empower younger females who are trying to get involved in this particular space.
Mm-hmm. I would love to. So supporting women entrepreneurs has always been one of my passions, and I've been involved. And the Alliance of Women Entrepreneurs was formed 20 years ago by 4 wonderful women who could not get funded and thought there had to be a better way to do it. So they came together and tried to figure out how do we support each other. The group has grown tremendously, and it actually serves different audiences. It supports both the first-time entrepreneur, the person who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, and also the experienced woman entrepreneur. There are some fantastic programs in the Alliance of Women Entrepreneurs. There's a mentorship program. There's so we mentor a number of young women. Actually, it doesn't have to be young women. It's more first-time women entrepreneurs. You can be any age and be a first-time entrepreneur and still need support and help, although many of the entrepreneurs are young. And so we will meet with those companies and figure out what they need and how can we best support and help them, and who do we connect them with. In addition, there are education programs, and in the last few years we started partnering with Ben Franklin, a fund for women-led companies, and we have funded a number of companies, including Leah Diagnostics and Roar for Good, and oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the others, but we've probably funded 6 or 7 companies that I'm very proud of my involvement with that, and also proud of the fact that we've been trying to also teach women how to invest in companies so that they can be good investors. And there's been a lot,
really super. Yeah, I was like I said, when I saw that you were involved with that group, I was so excited to want to delve into a little bit further because, like I said, not only because of my 2 young daughters who are involved in business, I just know that there's a lot of other girls out there that are in middle school and high school that, want to get into this space before they get into college, and how to get them actively involved. So, I really appreciate your passion for that.
Actually, if I could interject from a regional economic development standpoint, especially in the tech community, one of the tech community's biggest problems is not having enough tech-focused people. And so if we can encourage girls, and so there's programs like Tech Girls, which help young girls decide to go into tech, and we can nourish this interest in students while they're in college, and then help them find technology jobs, then we really will have a fantastic impact on the region's economy. And so I come to it from I want to help women, but it also really helps the Philadelphia region and the whole tech community, and that's one.
And who helped start that group, and what's your involvement with them?
Well, so Tech Girls was started by Tracy Wilson Rossman is the leader of that, and you should have her on your show sometime.
I definitely will. This is just a subject matter that I also. Just because it hits close to home. But I think, like you said, how do you sort of build up a region and an economy? And one of the ways is to obviously do this.
Mm-hmm. And right. So, and then at the university level. So, for example, I can speak to Temple. We recently formed the Women's Entrepreneurship Organization. We've had a long history with the League for Entrepreneurial Women. That was more, that was focused on both alumni and students. And I just last semester taught for the first time, created a course called Empowering Women Through Entrepreneurship. And it's about, teaching women how to negotiate, how to ask for things, to find out what are the organizations that support women entrepreneurs, and to really look at the data. How well are venture capital firms performing, related to investing in women, having women on boards, having women in their firms, which most of them, are not good at. I'm very proud to say at Robinhood, it's been a big focus area for us to build a community of women within, or to grow the number of women and people of color within our organization, because again, research shows that a diverse organization makes more money, is more successful, achieves more goals. And so that's been a big focus area for Robinhood. And I'm really excited about the fact that, we have really grown the number of women in our organization and the number of people of color. We've got a long way to go, but, very different than it was just 5 years ago.
No, I think it's awesome. Audible is an Amazon company, and they sponsor our Fast Pitch. I also started my own book club with all of my recommendations and the recommendations of our guests back at mitchellchadro.com/audible. So that's AUDIBLE. Again, mitchellchadro.com/audible. This next round, we call it, Ellen, our Fast Pitch, because we ask some very fast questions, looking for some quick answers, and it just gives us a little bit more in-depth of you. So if you could recommend a book, whether it be in business, personal, or life, that can inspire or motivate for the audience, that would be great.
Wow. So I'm looking right in front of me at The Art of Startup Fundraising. So for people who are thinking about fundraising, it's a very easy-to-read go-to guide. In terms of motivation, we're really focused on the business model canvas here on campus. And
the author there?
It's a long name. I'm sorry.
Since you have it right there in front of you.
Oh, yes, I do. Okay, so Alexander Osterwalder.
What we're going to do is we'll provide the link.
Okay, Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pineur are the authors of that book. And then
cool.
I mentioned earlier, Ask For It, Linda, Sarah. I'll
definitely Google that and I'll put it in the show notes most definitely.
Thank you.
Certainly. As far as I'm really a big quote guy. I don't know if you are or not, but anyway, with that being said, obviously quotes will either motivate or inspire, or something that you would just kind of put right up there on a billboard if you could. But something that you could leave us with here.
Wow. I think Ask For It is
okay. That's
probably
fine.
the mantra.
It's interesting. I alluded to it before our interview, and I actually went to your website, which of course I'll have a link to it, antiphony.com. And there's actually a quote from John Quincy Adams, where he says, "If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader." So I thought that was really cool too. So I just wanted to kind of interject that. You've already given us so many different apps for productivity. I know that you've already mentioned that because I listened up while you were talking as I continue to learn that skill set as I get a little bit older here. But can you tell us another app that you use in business or family and life? Go for it.
So it's called Dashlane, and this is particularly as you get older. I can't remember as much, and so Dashlane very securely holds all my passwords, and I don't have to remember them anymore. It's all built into Dashlane. So as long as I can remember the Dashlane password, I'm good.
Isn't that cool? Isn't that great that somebody came up with something so creative like that? We talk about resources, and what I like to try to let entrepreneurs know is you don't have to spend a lot to get a lot. In other words, some of them are obviously bootstrapping. They're trying to leverage what they have. So this would actually be a resource that's under $100, but it's been the most impactful for you.
Under $100 and impactful for me.
Sure.
I guess I don't know. I almost want to say my iPhone backup. I carry the Mophie with me everywhere.
There you go.
That's a great answer, but
right. No. I think it's terrific. And how about a fun fact about Ellen that maybe not a lot of people know about, but it kind of takes us in a little bit and it gets us to learn a little bit more about you.
So when I was younger, I wanted to be the first woman baseball analyst on TV.
Wow, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in my family. My mom was like the biggest baseball fan. She knew all the stats. All my friends would come over. She would know everything from batting averages to hitting statistics, you name it, she would know it. And so that's really, really cool. Can you tell us one of the challenges that you faced and how you came through it?
Challenge that I faced and how I came through it. So many along the way, right?
And this goes to your This actually goes to your resourcefulness, because as an entrepreneur, we got to be really creative sometimes when we're faced with different issues or problems that arise.
Mm-hmm. I think for me it's been more, along my career. At some points I've really geared up, and at some points I've geared down. And I guess one of the things I always tell people, when they're starting their career is it's okay to gear up and gear down. And every 6 months or so, do your own review. How am I doing? Am I breathing? Is it working? Do I like what I'm doing? Do I feel like I'm adding value? And if I'm not, then I course correct. And so that's something that I've done throughout my career. So there's not one particular challenge, but just it's more, that's one of the things that's helped me manage through challenges, is doing that, internal review.
That self-assessment. As I was saying before, Snappa sponsors our wrap-up round. I was so impressed with this company and what they can do to help you with all of your graphic design needs. Check out mitchellchadro.com/Snappa. That's SNAPPA. That's mitchellchadro.com/Snappa. I interviewed the founder of Snappa, Christopher Gimmer, and the interview is actually back at mitchellchadro.com/show028. Ellen, as we're wrapping up, can you leave us with 3 main takeaways that we can leave the audience? 3 main points.
Hire my students.
Number 1.
That diversity in organizations is really critical to their success.
Number 2.
For people in the Philadelphia region, there is investment going on, and it takes work to network your way to find the funding, but it definitely exists and is growing.
Ellen, how are we going to stay in contact with you?
Probably the best way would be to email me, eweber@antiphony.com.
And is there any special links or resources that we can put right there in the show notes that you want me to include? I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. So probably the better thing would be our website, so the different websites. So for Temple, iei.temple.edu. That's the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute. And for Robinhood, www.robinhoodventures.com. And MADV, Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures, for those entrepreneurs who are just starting out and thinking about funding, www.madv.org.
Well, Ellen, this has really been a blast. We really want to thank you so very much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm really looking forward to staying in contact with you. And we just want to thank you for everything that you're doing in this tri-state area and for everything that you're doing for entrepreneurship.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you.
Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business. It's your family. It's your life. Go out and live it. Let me ask my audience for their help. Please subscribe to my email list, mitchellchadro.com/signup. You'll get full interview transcripts, the ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, the Startup Checklist, education and training materials, and other resources only available to those who sign up. Boost the rankings of the Listen Up show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, also back at mitchellchadro.com/signup. I actually provide instructions right there on how to actually review the show on iTunes. It takes 2 minutes once you become a trusted friend of the show and leave a trusted review on iTunes. So I want to thank you for joining me here at mitchellchadro.com and the Listen Up show. Until next time, my trusted friends,